Hello friends, Dave Jones here, and today I want to talk a little bit about finger rolls. And before I do that, I want to explain again, if you're new to this channel, the purpose of this part of the channel, which is kind of my daily or somewhat daily, weekly journal of learning how to play the handpan. And I started on October 6th and skipped a couple weeks, and so right around November is when I actually really started playing this handpan. I've been taking an online course called Master the Handpan from David Cherrier. I have zero percussion background, and I needed something to get started. So I'm using this channel as a way to document my growth so that I can come back and watch, as well as to provide tips and a place to communicate with other people who are learning the handpan, who are interested in the handpan, or who have advice for me. And so today I mentioned I'm going to talk about and demonstrate finger rolls. And finger rolls, like most rhythms, Eastern rhythms, have one name and many different definitions when you go online and look to see how different people interpret what a finger roll is. And so I'll be talking about just one type of finger roll today. And I also wanted to mention I heated up this mic to around 80 in terms of the pickup for the H4n. So this is really for me to gauge the how hot this mic is. It felt like yesterday it was a little dim and that I was losing some of the vibrancy of what I was playing. So even when I elevated the levels for producing it, the track. So finger rolls are a way to, as David would say, kind of spice up the playing. It allows you to play different combinations of notes. And you'll see people who do the finger roll where they're oscillating their fingers around a point. So, and you can do that with the wrist as well. That's not the type of finger roll that I'm doing because I wanted a little bit of a different sound for a composition that I was creating. And I'll say that the first person I saw do a finger roll like this on the handpan was David Kutcherman, and it was on a rhythm that he had on YouTube. If you search handpan groove on YouTube, it's one of the first grooves. It's a backbeat groove, and so I was learning that, and he did this thing where he does that very quickly as he's playing this groove. I really like that sound. As I was researching, I also saw Jacob Cole, who's another handpan, another percussionist on YouTube. And Jacob Cole was one of the first people who really explained, okay, this is how you're doing it if you're going to use multiple hands to get this rolling kind of rhythm, which is why it's called a finger roll. So you're basically, you could use the other fingers and you could go in the opposite direction. But the way that Jacob taught us viewers how to do it was to really take your middle finger and then rotate to the index finger, and then the same thing on the left side. Some of you know I'm recovering from a brain injury. My left side has been impaired for the last 3 years, and doing finger rolls has been very slow for me. Learning them has been very difficult, and I have spent many hours as we're watching TV, as I'm sitting alone, as I am meditating, working on finger rolls. At first, I really had very little control over my fingers at all. And you're basically creating and then you can speed it up. So what I've started to do, and to do this religiously, is to do a lot of stretching before I play. So I'll take each finger and I'll pull them back just to get some movement, not only movement, but blood flow, to wake up the cells and the membranes of these fingers. And I'll do that with each hand. Another thing that I've learned is I'll take my fingers and I'll stretch them as far as I can, and then I'll relax them. Stretch as far as I can, and then relax them. Stretch as far as I can, and then relax them. And then into a fist. Stretch as far as I can, relax into a fist. Stretch as far as I can, relax into a fist. Then I've started working, because I was not able to move these fingers independently, as well as many of the fingers on my left hand. And before my accidents, I was very ambidextrous and could use the left hand and the right hand almost equally well. I couldn't throw as fast of a fastball with my left hand, but I could throw a fastball. And I am technically right hand dominant. After the injury, I have really struggled with vision, with balance, and with some motor skills. And playing the handpan really had brought that to the focus. So I have had to really work with my fingers to gain more dexterity, as well as just to be able to communicate with them. So I couldn't do this. I just couldn't. I could not make it work. So I started taking one finger, my index finger on my right hand, and I would do 10 taps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. With the middle finger. With the next finger, still a challenge with that one. Without moving the other ones, with palms down, and then the pinky. Then I would go to the thumb, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I moved to the left hand. Not very loud on that finger. Pinky. Okay. Then I would go back and forth. I would do, or I would use both, or I do, not I would. Index fingers. Middle fingers. Ring fingers. Pinkies. Thumbs. And I think it's important at this stage, if you're struggling with dexterity with your fingers, to keep your palms on the surface. If you raise the palms, you're more likely to start the wrist movement, which is important later on with other types of finger rolls. But for the type of finger dexterity that I'm trying to gain, it isn't helpful. I just end up moving my arms and my hands. So I'm really trying to isolate. Then I'll do a tap, 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 tap. And I'll do these 50, 60, 100 times to try to wake up my fingers. And I have some weird joint things going on in this hand that I've discovered, and so I'm working on how do I meet those challenges and overcome them. Everybody is going to be a little bit different on how you interact with finger dexterity specifically. You know, you move from right to left, but now we're becoming even more specific on making these little appendages on each hand work together and independently and at our will. The next step that I've taken is to use a metronome, and my metronome is connected to the phone that is recording this, so I don't have that now, but I would strongly encourage you to use a metronome and to set it low at first and make sure that your strikes are even and pronounced. Even now, I've got work to do. I can feel that there's some unevenness, and it's actually, I think, harder to go slow than it is to go fast. Now, I've had my wrists down. Keep your wrist down, move to a different position. So you're really just using the fingers. You're really getting that finger control. One of the reasons to do this type of a finger roll is you get a very pronounced roll. You get very pronounced taps. That's not always what you want. there are different finger rolls for that kind of a sound. When you want a very specific tap tap tick tick tack 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 sound, and you want the note to be much more noticeable and not be muted, these types of finger rolls can be very effective. So now I'm going to lift my palms off. Play with volume. Move your hands around. If you only practice finger taps in one position, when you move your arms to another position, your brain and your muscles don't have the memory built in that position because you're now using slightly different muscles. Experiment with putting your wrists back down. Raising them back up with the palm of your hand, I'm sorry. Feel that movement of the wrist, the slight movement that's needed once you decide to speed up. Once you set your metronome, play these for at least a minute, 2 minutes before you move on to the next speed. Okay, and so on. How does this then become part of a meaningful part of actually playing, other than, oh, look, I can do a finger roll, and I couldn't? That actually is very satisfying. I will tell you, when I first got this and felt them rolling into each other, after months, I am not kidding, months of working on this, the feeling is just so satisfying. And part of that is because of learning, and learning is satisfying, and especially when you've worked on something that's been very difficult. I'll say that some of the other things that have been helpful, when you're playing a handpan, of course you're not sticking your finger on. The fingers have to pop back up and off, and the faster you go, the quicker that reflex has to be to keep a distinct roll going, unless you want more of a muted roll, which is sometimes you want that roll. But to get this roll, there has to be somewhat, almost a little bit of tension in the wrists that moves to the flexibility, the tick 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 tack tack of the fingers. How I first felt that was someone was talking about taking your finger, try to tap as fast as you can, and now stiffen up these muscles in your forearm and watch your finger move faster. That feeling that came from this tensing happens when you're playing. I think those exercises were the first exercise where I felt the arm needing to become the solid, stiff part from which the hand could be flexible, more flexible, and pop up and down with the arms serving as that base, and then the wrist just ever so gently move to create the pop. Another hint, as you're doing this, focus on where the beats come, and what I mean by that is, if you're going middle, index, and you could do index, middle, but if you're doing middle, index, then start, as you're listening to yourself play, start to really focus on those middle fingers hitting. And the index fingers will almost take care of themselves. If you notice that the index finger is dying on the, and it it's muting and killing the roll. You need to work on the index finger and the combination of the index finger and this. So get your metronome out with your palm down. Until it feels really comfortable. Speed up the metronome until it becomes comfortable at that speed. I am by no means finished with this process, but I have gotten much better than I was. Now raise the palms. Now, once you're getting comfortable with those rotations, you can either go back, or you could go back to some sing. If you're that, for me it was this left index finger was this pooping out. It was too rigid. I had to get used to relaxing it. I noticed that it was super straight, and it would die, and I was using all the muscles here, and none of the muscles here developed. So in the last 3 days, I've really been focused on bending it, a focused bend, and it's popping up and off so much more quickly than it was. This is very satisfying, I will admit. I'm very proud of myself for pushing through how hard it has been just to get to that point. When I started, it sounded like this. So go slow. Palms down, then palms up. Use the metronome. Stretch the fingers. Isolate the fingers when they're struggling. Isolate the combinations. Rotate the combinations. And do all this with the metronome to really keep yourself on track. The metronome, it gives a very objective case, whatever this hand or this hand or this finger are becoming the issue in the finger roll. So how is it actually used? Why would you ever even want to know how to do this? So I played around with this rhythm a few weeks ago, something like that. I don't remember what it was. It was close to that. Some spice. Or you could also do just playing around, but lots of things that you can do to create these wonderful patterns in your music. you.